Hi, I'm Tessa, a veteran educator working in the field of special education.
And I'm Kim, mom of 2 autistic boys and a late diagnosed autistic person myself.
And welcome to Totally Over the Spectrum, where we dive into embracing autism through understanding and support. Welcome to episode 51, where we discuss the next steps for selective eating and autism.
So we talked about selective eating in episode 20, and I'll put a link to that. And what we covered is basically initial steps and how to get started with your selective eater. We also need to mention that adjusting someone's diet should be done under the supervision of a qualified professional, like your family doctor or your pediatrician or your nutritionist. And eating behavior falls under the guidance of an occupational therapist. So we will do a very quick recap of the initial steps here, but mostly this is going to be about next steps. And that's because this was requested by one of our listeners. So thank you to Jamie for requesting and reaching out and requesting this. And if you find this helpful, please consider subscribing and leave us a comment if there's other things that you'd like us to talk about. Okay, so the initial starting point, we're just going to go over this quickly.
Yep, go for it.
Is making a list. So I made a PDF for this, and I'll put it in our description so people can just print this out. They don't have to make their own list. And on that list is preferred foods, sometimes foods, and foods that they used to eat but don't eat anymore, because that's a thing, and goal foods. So it gives you a good idea of where you're at and where you're going. I also have columns for texture, a column for flavor, and lastly, a column for serving instructions, like how it needs to be prepared and delivered, because all of those things are important. So an example would be the food for Peter's my youngest selective eater, a Royal Gala apple, and then the texture would be firm and crunchy. The flavor would be sweet. And then the instructions are that it needs to be whole, not sliced, not peeled, no bruises, no imperfections. And you would do that for all of these foods.
Yes, might I add, I learned that on the first day of knowing Peter, where I decided to cut his apple up to be accommodating and helpful, as I thought, which resulted into tears. For both of us, might I add. But anyway, continue.
There you go. So, yeah, it can be very distressful. So, the information that I have, where I received it, Peter has an occupational therapist that's helping me with his selective eating, and I asked her for information to share with our listeners, so everything is coming from an occupational therapist. So big thank you to Rima for that. She's awesome. So once you have your list, you should pretty quickly see a pattern. Like Peter likes foods that are firm, soft, and sweet. And if you're going to introduce new foods, you're going to have more success if you follow that flavor profile. But introducing new foods is actually not the next steps. So the next steps. Now that you have your list, set up a routine.
Yes, setting up a routine is going to be crucial. It's preparing and prepping the environment and the person in order to be accepting of the next steps in diversifying in eating and being selective eating. One of my go-to strategies for this is making sure that the food, you set the meal time specifically every day so that you start to create a habit and you start to create it to the point where it becomes muscle memory. So they're automatically going to want to get up at a certain specific time of day and be ready to want to eat. Secondly, one of my big strategies that I use is get a lot of exercise in so that they are hungry and they're ready to eat, and they're, they've got a vivacious appetite. So you want to use that to your ability in order to get them to eat.
Absolutely. There are a lot of sensory sensitivities surrounding eating, smells, textures, flavors, and there can also be an element of anxiety. And we would like to reduce those things wherever possible. So letting the person have control freedom to explore and refuse without consequence. Really important. Meals don't have to look traditional in order to be correct for your family. If you have a neurodivergent household, you're going to need to embrace the differences.
So, presenting the food in a manner that is acceptable for that particular person, for that eater, is going to be the battle. Half the battle is going to be won right there. It doesn't have to be in the way that you would like it, it's going to be the way they like it. And the sooner people get on board with that, the battle is half won right there.
I know a lot of people don't like to have any kind of devices at the table during mealtime. I let Peter have his iPad during mealtime because it helps to keep him regulated. It helps him to sit at the table for longer because he isn't wanting to rush back to his iPad. And it can also be a bit of a distraction so that he's not solely focused on the task of eating, which might sound a little bit counterintuitive to some people, but you know how easy it is to sit and eat one at a time foods like popcorn or chips when you're watching a movie and suddenly it's empty because you're not really thinking about it. And if you want your selective eater to eat more of the food that the preferred food, sometimes having a little bit of a distraction can be helpful. This is always going to be dependent on the person. But for me, I let Peter have his iPad at the table. That helps him regulate himself in order to eat.
The other aspect of it is also don't overwhelm them by putting a lot of food on the plate because all of a sudden this task now looks massive and they're just going to be put off by it straight away. You're always best to put a little amount where it looks obtainable and enjoyable and it is not a chore and they can always ask you for more versus being completely turned off by having a plate mounded with food and they no longer are interested in it.
Yeah, that is another really good point. So all of that is setting up a routine, setting up the space, setting up the environment, getting everything ready just to start eating. And it's a really
Yes.
crucial step. And everything is going to be trial and error. It's okay to make mistakes. That's how you learn. That's how you're going to find out what the preferences are and how to create the best environment.
Yeah. The routine this is going to be consistency. You have to have this consistency in order to set the routine. So once we've set the routine and we've prepped the environment, our next steps are going to be
Changing the visual
onto you.
presentation of a current preferred food. You're not introducing new food right away. That's not going to happen. What you want to do is change the visual presentation of a current preferred food. Keep in mind that all of these steps can take months. Nothing is going to be fast here. It takes as long as it takes.
Yeah. And generally, the rule of thumb is each introduction can take a minimum of a 20 to 30 exposure. So when you introduce something for the first time, it is going to take at least 20 to 30 exposures before it's going to become something they're willing to entertain and accept. So please don't give up after you've tried it for half a dozen times. That's nowhere near the amount of time and the exposure that they're going to need.
So changing the visual presentation of a current preferred food. So if I'm still following my apple as a example, cutting Peter's apple was the next step. So because we want to increase his ability to accept change or newness with something we already know he will eat. So I might start by just cutting his apple in half. Did one step, cut the apple in half. And for Peter, I need to do that in front of him so that he's part of it. There's an inclusiveness. I might even get him to cut the apple for me. If that's age appropriate, you can make sure everything is safe, right? That lets him have some control over what is happening.
Yeah, that sense of control is going to be crucial because then you're you're inadvertently giving them the belief that it was their idea, and therefore the acceptance is going to be a lot easier.
Changing the presentation could also include just taking it out of the packaging first, or putting it in a different bowl or on a different plate, or cutting things into different sizes or shapes. Like if you're eating pancakes, maybe cutting them into different sizes or different shapes. And you start with the smallest change that you think is going to be successful. So with Peter, cutting the apple up into small, tiny things, that's not going to be successful for him right out the gate. I had to start with a very small change, which is just cutting it in half. And then I would work, once that was accepted, which again could take those 20 to 30 times, once that's accepted, then I can try cutting it in quarters. And that, you can see how long this process can take. And then once that's accepted, maybe I could cut it into eighths. Maybe I could cut it into chunks. But I can't experiment with that right away. I need to take as small a change as possible until he's able to accept that change.
Till it becomes routine, till it becomes muscle memory, and then you can introduce the next step.
Yeah, and this is, you're only doing this with one food at a time. And all of this foundation work that you're doing is going to increase the tolerance for newness overall. So all of these small changes build up to be big change later.
Mm-hmm.
It's a marathon.
Absolutely.
It is not a sprint.
It is. No, it is. It is a marathon. Yep, absolutely.
So the next thing that I have is that playing with food is important.
I know a lot of people are going to go, excuse me, that's not good table manners over here. We're going to park that because what we need is now them to be engaged in the food. Our focus is on the selective eating, not on table manners. So exploring it allows them to get rid of that anxiety over the sensory aspect of it, right? So you're in order to allowing them to play with their food reduces the anxiety and overcomes the sensory overload. And allow this to happen every single time. Every single time that you put it down, they're going to investigate with it. They're going to play with it. And over time, as they become used to it, you will find over the 30 exposure, that playtime is going to become less. And it's going to be more engaging of like, okay, we're going to play with it. Oh, okay, I've done it a few times now. It's good. And then they're not as reluctant to then take the next step of putting it into their mouth. Even if it's for the most minuscule bite.
Exactly. So that includes letting them interact with food in non-traditional ways. So if you imagine that you introduced a food and you want them to eat it with a spoon, utensils come with their own set of sensory issues. So metal spoons have a taste. Taste like spoon. Wooden spoons, disgusting. Can't do it. Plastic spoons, there's some texture issues. There can be ridges and stuff. And the shape and size of the spoon can also be an issue. And that's just a spoon. So letting them explore with their hands, if that's what they choose to do, feel the food. Part of taste is smell. So getting accustomed to the smell is as good as tasting food. Right? That is a success. Being in the same room with the food is a success. So because we're using right now preferred foods, a lot of these sensory issues should not be terrible because it's already a food that they're accustomed to and that they enjoy. So once you've modified the food, they might have to go back and touch it again and smell it again and lick it again and touch it to their lips and kiss it and take a nibble, because all of that is like, this is a little bit different and I want to make sure that this is okay for me.
And you're not tricking me.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the aspect of, is like, you're not trying to con me into doing something that I really don't want to do. And playing with the food is when they're playing with the food and they're dropping it, they will naturally put their hand to their mouth. So inadvertently, they are tasting it. And when you start to introduce new foods, that is going to be your biggest ally right there, is that sensory play, moving it, touching around our face, our mouth, inadvertently tasting it, smelling it, is all going to desensitize them.
This is all building up to trying new foods after, but you have to stick with the preferred stuff first. So getting past that initial hurdle of like tiny nibbling and moving on, that's huge. That can be a huge breakthrough. Like that was one of the biggest things when you were working with Peter that I couldn't do. I didn't have the patience to sit and let him play with something for 45 minutes. I'm just not wired to be able to do that. And when you were teaching him, do you remember the drama that kid
Oh,
had? Like it
Shakespeare would be so proud of him.
it
Oh,
you
goodness me.
you used to call him the drama llama because he was so over the top with his, like he was going to perish from nibbling, and I mean the most tiny little nibble. And so people don't think that it was dysregulation. It was drama. Like there's a difference. He was putting on a huge show because he thought he could get away with not trying it because he had worked with a lot of people who didn't know the difference between his drama and actual dysregulation.
Yeah. So for me, I would, when he was actually dysregulated, I would then, I would intervene and say, "You're okay. This is okay." But when he was in his dramatic state of like, ah, and like all the faces and I would be like totally ignoring it. And I would be modeling the eating behavior that I would like him to ultimately achieve. I would just carry on picking up whatever, putting it in my mouth, and exaggerating the chewing motion so he knew that I was actually chewing it and ingesting it. And I would exaggerate the enjoyment aspect of it to match his drama on the other end. So, but I would not acknowledge the drama. I would just like carry on. And when he realized that this was, I'm not buying into this, it soon stopped.
And it's
It
really
did.
important not to force it. So don't, if you've got something on the spoon and you're trying to feed them and they're flailing and that, give them the spoon, let them play with it. Don't make this a battle. You're not going to win that.
Yeah, no, you're not going to win that. And once, and if, and you've got to stick to your word. This is going to be really important. If you say you just have one bite and then you're all done, and even if it's the most minuscule, teeny weeny mouse bite, that's it. You have to honor that. You had one bite. Thank you very much. We are all done. That's it.
Yeah,
Nothing. Yep,
you
that
get
was
to
it.
decide what they're eating, but they get to decide how much and if they actually eat it.
Yep. So, and honor that, because once they realize that you're going to honor that for them and there is an end to this, oh, the anxiety goes from here down to here. That you're going to honor this in them. So, yeah, absolutely honor that. When you say one bite or two bites, and I would always say with Peter, one to try and one to no thank you. And that was my way of getting him past that initial first sensory overload to take that next bite to say, oh, actually, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. So that was my strategy of using if one to try and one to no thank you. As soon as he did the second one and said no thank you, we were done.
But you had to work up to that. You had to work up to
Yes.
that first nibble. And then once that was consistent that he would take the first nibble, then you implemented the okay, one to try, one for no thank you. So those are small steps. Everything has to be incremental.
And I think for to give people a reference of the duration, I did this over a period of 3 years, not months or times, 3 years, folks. So this is just giving you the realization of this is a marathon and not a sprint.
Yeah. And kids are going to go at their own pace. Some are going to go faster, some are going to go slower. It's going to be different with different things. So stay the course. You'll get there.
Yep.
So the last one that I have for now, for next steps, because these are actually quite a few next steps because they do take a long time. is to make small, like once you can alter the physical appearance of it, to make small changes to texture or flavor. So once I'm at the point where I can cut Peter's apple up and he will still accept that and eat that, now I can try adding a bowl of sugar for dipping, or cinnamon sugar, or caramel sauce, or something that he can put the tiniest little amount on, which slightly changes the texture or flavor. And he still gets to say, well, now he's set in the routine that he will nibble pretty much whatever I give him. But that's, I mean, he's 18 now. Like it took some time. So that's, now you're setting that foundation. The reason that you're changing the flavor and texture is so that you can down the road try things like applesauce or baked apples or different brands of apples. But you have to start with the small stuff first. So a little change in texture or flavor, not both at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. So it has to be the introduction of one or the other. So, for example, let's take Peter's chicken nuggets, right? So at first they had to be whole, but now they're able to be cut up. So the next step would be, cutting it up into smaller pieces if necessary, and then trying a different type of chicken nugget. Like I would say, take a chicken strip, cook it up at the same time, and cut it up in the same size sample and put it in. Just one. And it is the introduction at that stage, right? It's an introduction of a different variety of chicken nugget, but it's still a chicken nugget. It's just in a different format. It's a chicken strip, but I have modified that chicken strip to look like a cut up chicken nugget. So the appearance of it is going to be the same. So that aspect of it is not going to be overwhelming and different.
And it's the same brand.
Right? It is the same brand. It's got the breading on it, but it's just a different variety. So it's not, it's not a huge change. It's just that it's a change within the family over there.
Yeah.
And that would be it for however long it took to get to the next stage.
Those are a lot of next steps. So we're going to cut it off there. And if someone would like to hear more about this, please leave us a comment. We can always do another one for next steps past these. But this is a lot to start with.
Yeah, and we're also going to put a link onto a website that I found from a dietitianist whose sibling has autism, and she has created a, she's done it really well, this website, onto different aspects of it. So we're going to add that onto there, and I hope I'm getting her name right. I think it's Britain or Britty or some along those lines. It's an unusual spelling, so we're going to add that in so that folks can have a look at that and follow along, because she's done a good job of it.
Excellent.
Now, because we're fixated on food and change, and I think that would be one of your favorite topics. Like you like to perseverate on things over there. Can we talk about that on our next one?
Are we talking about perseverating or are we talking about perfectionism?
Oh, which would you like?
Let's do perfectionism.
All right. Okay. All right. Because I'm a happy recipient of some of your perfectionisms over there.
It is a thing.
Okay. All right. Okay. We shall talk about, perfectionism on our next episode.
We'll see you then.
Until then, have a great one.
Thanks for tuning in. If you know someone who might find this episode helpful, feel free to share. Also, check out our website and socials linked in the description.